All right. So, hi everyone again to this discussion of Plastic Free July with Jazzmine Raine as well as Nandini Goel, who is our host. Before we start into the session, I'd like to talk about a bit about the Plastic Free July and why are we doing this. Now, as everyone knows, plastic is a huge concern for our generation, and this particular decade has always been about climate change and how we can change it. And a lot of people are actually moving towards the cause wherein everybody wants to reduce the usage of plastic. So, Plastic Free July broadly is a global movement that helps millions of people associate themselves to the cause. So that we can have beautiful streets, better oceans, and a cleaner, healthier life. And that is what this is about. And basically, the first step in Plastic Free July would involve working on an individual level, wherein we as individuals take certain steps, take learn certain practices and teach them to other people so that we can drastically reduce the single-use plastic. Just to give you a few examples in terms of how we can become plastic free, particularly single use, would be to not use takeaway coffee cups. Instead, we could use our own reusable coffee cups made out of steel or other materials. Sanitary items, particularly tampons and pads, should be replaced with cloth, reusable cloth, because again, menstrual hygiene products again are not biodegradable for at least 300 to 400 years. Dental care products like toothbrushes, toothpaste, try avoiding using the plastic toothbrushes, replace them with wooden toothbrushes. Decorative items that we use in celebrations, although we have drastically reduced that due to the given pandemic, but again, whenever celebrating, try to use products that are do not harm the environment. Again, some of other examples would be your hygiene products, your soap, wireless plastic. Try to do a bulk food shopping and try to minimize the single-use plastic in a major way. To know more about how you can contribute to the cause and how you can be a part of this solution rather than being a part of the problem, you can visit to the website called www.plasticfreejuly.org. That is where you'll be actually be able to understand more about the ways that you can help. And now introducing our guest for today, Ms. Jasmine Raine. A bit about Jasmine before we get started. Jasmine, if you can just wave for us for people to know. Yeah, hi. Great. So Jasmine is a social entrepreneur who has a passion for responsible travel, conscious consumption, ethical fashion, and development within the community. A bit of a brief history. At 18 years old, Jasmine launched her own nonprofit called Rain for Water, which I think is a pretty cool name, and which basically led her to travel the world, learning the ins and out of grassroots development and social innovation in Canada. So she used to live in Canada, and she has now migrated the whole. Yeah, she's traveled the whole world, and now she is in India for good. So she's also traveled Ghana before India. And before the age of 25, Jasmine had the pleasure of working as the operations manager for Educare India, and she was also the executive director of Studio 89. Currently, Jasmine runs this organization called Hara World, which is an experiential education and impact travel platform that empowers and connects individuals through environmental justice programs, which again, as I mentioned, is the need of the hour. And just a fun fact, she also ran North India's first zero waste guest house called the Hara House. So do check it out. And moving on, we also have our host for today,
Thank you for that
Nandini.
introduction.
Thanks a lot. So moving on, we also have Nandini Goel, who is our host for this session, and she will be in conversation with Jasmine. And before I pass it over to Nandini, guys, if you have any questions during the course of this session, I would request you to reserve it by the end. So once Nandini finishes the conversation with Jasmine, I think Jasmine will then be open up to questions which you might want to ask. So that's about it. So over to you, Nandini.
So, hello everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Nandini and I'm 16 years old from Kolkata. And so, before we start, I hope everyone's doing great and having a good day. And so, before we start, I would like to show everyone just a short video. It's a very short video about plastic pollution. So, just to get into that perspective about why we are here and why we are doing this. So just give me a second to share my screen. So I hope everyone could see that video. Yeah.
Yes, Nandini.
Yeah. So, what I'd like to do is first ask a few questions so we can get to know Miss Rain a little bit more and a little bit about her journey on, a zero waste lifestyle. So, I'll get started with that. And my first question actually is that what was the inspiration, or was there like one particular thing that set you off on this path to lead a zero waste life?
Yeah, whenever I try to think back to that moment that really captured me, I think actually back to high school. When I was in like 9th or 10th grade, I went to school in a new city. I was in a more like diverse community in Toronto, Canada, where I was growing up. And I was starting to identify how privileged I was to have access to anything I needed, resources, abundant opportunity. Canada is known as this country of like, freedom and opportunity, really. And especially as someone who's a mixed race female, I grew up in a mixed race family. My mother's side is like white Canadian, and my dad's side is West Indian from the Caribbean. And I was already seeing so much divide even among my family in terms of access to opportunity and resources, just based on socioeconomic and cultural standing within society. And unfortunately, yes, like environmental justice plays a huge role in the connection to like cultural makeup of societies and religion, race, everything. So I really started to dive deeper into my journey, and I also wanted to connect back to where my family was from. And like I did some study over the last couple of years to connect it back to West Africa. And in that journey, I just wanted to learn more and more about, okay, so what is it that other countries are not accessing? And obviously, internet was still pretty new when I was in high school. So it was, you had to really dive deeper a little bit. Not everything was easy to find. And, so I started watching a lot more documentaries and reading, and I was a total nerd at that time because nobody was doing that. And I remember watching this very, very specific documentary called Flow, which is by director Irina Selena, it's quite old now. It's probably about a 15-year-old documentary at this point. But it was basically about the water crisis across West Africa, and connecting that, or actually across the continent of Africa, and connecting that to large corporations from Nestle, Coca-Cola, all of these big guys, and this idea that communities couldn't access safe drinking water because corporations had come in and monetized water, which is a natural resource. We should all have access to that. And that kind of led me down this journey of, obviously, even as I was young, and I was like, my community didn't really understand all these different things. No one could connect to it all. So I was just like, okay, like I know I'm just one person, but I can do something. So I started just being more mindful in how I consumed, bringing my mom into the conversation, my dad, my family, my friends, and it was challenging. But then I started, I realized that I couldn't do it alone. So I started connecting with more organizations across Canada, and I ended up meeting this guy who ran this organization in Ghana, and started working on a project to work with like the agricultural sector, as well as understanding like the connection between natural resources and the needs of farmers, and the kind of conspiracies almost, and like challenges that were being faced in pumping the agricultural sector within Ghana. And so this ended up leading me to kind of travel to Ghana, and I was already traveling a lot because I actually grew up with my mother was a travel agent. So we traveled a lot when I was young. So it was, after seeing years and years of going to these different destinations and starting to really connect the dots that like, hey, this isn't fair. There is inequality here across all these multiple countries that I'm visiting, and it doesn't make sense. And that was like me at a young age just being like, hey, like there's a problem here, it needs to be addressed. And a lot of different things spanned from that. That connects me all the way back to how I ended up here in India. But the one thing that I learned was that I realized that, hey, if there's one thing that I can do, it's actually just being more mindful of how I consume and the kind of brands that I want to support. So, instantly I decided, like, at that time, just Nestle was like the bad guy to me because I just watched that documentary. So I needed to find a way to nix all of their products from my lifestyle. And then when I started to dive deeper into it, I was like, oh my goodness, all of the products that they're making, think about what that is on a global scale and their presence across the entire world and the multiple products that they're serving or offering, and then all of the packaging that goes into making those products. Where does all of that go? So that's really, those couple of years in high school really is what led me down this path of conscious consumption. And going into like zero waste was not really something that I realized I was doing. But, I feel like once you kind of start your conscious living journey, you just kind of end up working towards there. So that's kind of how it all got started.
Yeah, so one of my questions was also like, was there a particular way you went about it, or how was the transition? But you kind of answered that a little in this answer as well. So was there a particular way, or you just were conscious about what you were consuming, what you were buying, what you were using in your life, or was it a set of rules that you were following, that I'm not going to buy packaged items, or no, I'm not going to buy any plastic or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, when I first got started, it was really just about identifying what my values were. If I was realizing instantly that plastic was this bad guy that was getting in the way of not just proper sustainable waste management, and not having proper recycling facilities in certain areas across the world, and then also the fact that it was becoming a barrier in people accessing natural resources. I just kind of decided, like, okay, how can I eliminate as much plastic as possible? And that started with when you go to the grocery store, for example, if you see the same item, a great example of this is like cereals or pulses or oils, etc. Just simply going into a grocery store, this was like one of the things I first started with, is like, okay, there's a plastic option, there's a glass option, and then there's usually like a bulk option where you can kind of bring your own container. That's obviously become a lot more popular now, maybe not so much 10 plus years ago when I was in high school. But making a decision when you go to a store and be like, okay, if I'm going to avoid this plastic, but these other products are more expensive, how do I handle, how do I want to navigate that? And financial accessibility, the pricing of getting products and products and consumable items that are not in plastic are usually more expensive. So, I just had to make a conscious choice and like help my mom kind of navigate that with me, obviously, because I was in high school. I wasn't paying for all my own groceries. But as soon as I moved out, obviously, when I was going to college and et cetera, like it was easier to make those decisions. But, I think if I had to say one thing that really like I had to change to kind of, move in that direction was my mindset. Really getting into a mindset of like, okay, this is a really big problem. I can do my best. I can try one little thing every day, every week, every month to lead to that big change. And if you think about it now, it's like I started that journey over 10 years ago. So, that where I'm at now, although I'm really hard on myself. I'm very, very hard on myself. So even in my late 20s, I still feel like I'm not doing enough and I get really down about it. But it is a journey, and it's all about mindset and knowing that you can make a change. You can make a difference by just switching up what products you're buying, finding alternatives, and also being resourceful. What items do you have access to in your home, in your community, that you can utilize to like create zero waste alternatives to some of the things that you might be using. So mindset is definitely a big one, and it's also a big internal challenge as well.
Yeah, about one point you mentioned. So we don't need a few people living a zero waste life perfectly, right? We need many, many millions of people trying to do it imperfectly. But what we need is the effort and that change in mindset, right? So regarding that, I also wanted to ask you that what was a challenge you faced, or what was something surprising to you all of a sudden when you had the change in mindset about going zero waste? And do you still face any challenges now, and how do you sort of overcome them, or try and find a solution for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to the point I just made, one would definitely be like financial accessibility. So the pricing of products and consumable items that, you know, align with my zero waste values. You know, I've had a very interesting career that's been all in, and it's been beautiful, all in the nonprofit sector and social enterprise, and I've gotten to connect with amazing people. But I think, as we all know, you know, working in the nonprofit sector doesn't really mean you're a millionaire and you're making $1 million. You know, it's all about, you know, people in the planet. It's not really about profit first, especially nonprofit. A little bit of a different model with social enterprise. But financial accessibility was definitely a challenge for me. And, you know, that goes back a lot to like environmental justice and its connection to, you know, being a minority as well, and like growing up with a single mom and not having the finances available to kind of invest in the things that aligned with our family values. But, you know, that's something that we did navigate by getting creative and innovative. You know, one thing I'm so proud of my mom for, you know, because it was obviously a challenge. I think that's the next thing, is a challenge to get your family on board if you're living in a family setting. And I'm sure like when I know exactly what you're going through. When you're 16 and you're trying to get your parents and your family on board with the changes you want to make at home, it's a challenge and it's a journey. And, you know, I'm so blessed and I'm grateful that my mom has gotten to this point now, you know, in her late 50s, and she's like making everything from scratch now, and it's incredible. But, you know, it wasn't always like that, and it does take time. So, you know, I think with saying that, you know, a challenge is also being optimistic and remembering what you're working towards so that you can motivate others, and also ensuring that your language is never, you know, aggressive. You don't want people to feel like you're scolding them for not doing enough, or that, you know, they've done something wrong. It's so important that you also nurture them through the process, just like you nurture yourself. Because again, we live in a world that is built on linear systems. So what I mean by that is like everything is meant to go this way. And it, you know, so if we're thinking about a product, you know, it's made, it's consumed, it's trashed, and then nothing happens. And, you know, we can go into a whole conversation about waste management probably another day. But, you know, for the most part, most countries don't have a proper recycling, you know, manufacturing setup, especially in a country like India, where we have so many people and so many products being consumed on a daily basis. You know, we don't have enough facilities to even keep up with like consumer demand and how many people are in this country. So, you know, thinking about, you know, how we need this, you know, circular economy. So I know these are like big concepts, and I want to try and break them down a little bit too. But when we talk about a circular economy, it's really about how do we take that line and just kind of curve it, make it into a little bit of a circle, so that we can make sure all those products are going back through the system. And if we don't have the right, you know, infrastructure in our communities to do that, you know, okay, so how can I, you know, be an advocator for, you know, getting on board with that, or how can I assist in that journey with, you know, local policymakers, or, you know, maybe it's a passion of yours to kind of get involved in the government aspect of it. But then it's also just thinking like, okay, like how can I just be resourceful at home? And, you know, that's kind of how we also started Hutta House, you know, after years and years of just trying new things, seeing what failed, seeing what was successful, seeing what language worked for communicating this lifestyle to others is what helped us kind of nurture that space. But again, those were, you know, accessibility, like using the right language and learning to be resourceful in your mindset are, you know, huge challenges that we all go through in this process.
Yeah, getting your family kind of convinced is a big challenge even I'm facing. It's always like a conflict in my head. Okay, I want to do this, I want to make this change. But, you know, I have to like ask my family. I live in a big family with 12 of us living together.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, and so getting something changed, it sort of takes time. We need to convince them that, you know, this is better, and explaining like the life cycle of a product, of how we use it once and then it has no other use. It doesn't get recycled, it straight away goes to the landfill. That sort of does help as well. And even with the recycling, I myself have discovered that the recycling is more like taken care of by the private sector, not the public sector, especially where I live. And so that is something that needs to be changed and the government needs to be more involved in. And
Absolutely.
with all of these challenges, obviously, that everyone needs to face, and we will overcome all of those slowly and slowly. But I wanted to ask you how you find the motivation to keep going. Especially you hear statistics like 12 million tons of plastic enters the ocean every single year. So, so do you feel like you're only one person living a zero waste lifestyle, and how is that sort of going to help? Sometimes, did you feel that, especially in the initial stages? Sometimes I am like, I do feel like, how is that going to change anything? Just me doing one thing. But it's slowly, that change in mindset does come, like you have to do your part. So, what do you think about it, and what is your motivation of keeping on going?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like, stats, like statistics like that, hearing that is what does motivate me. And I feel like we're all getting into a mindset, I feel like this generation, like you are so lucky to be 16 in this time. Like it's such an exciting, like it's a terrifying time to be alive, but it's also the most exciting time to be alive because your generation is so much more aware of what's happening and also has access to the internet and communities to, have these, to learn more. You're hosting a talk because you're amazing. Like, these are the types of things that are what motivate me. And I feel like I've been more motivated in the last kind of, 10 years because I've been working so closely with youth. Youth are actually what inspire me. Like, and that's really the concept of Hada World. Like, we're trying to build a green world. Hada is green. We want to build, like, Hada World is the future of what we want our world to look like. And that's why I believe that we need to give the tools and resources to, young people like yourself, because you have the right idea. You know how to, where your values are in the right place, and you know that there's community out there, and you're actively seeking that community. And those were things that definitely kept me motivated when I was younger, but it was just more challenging because we didn't have access to, all the, the internet, all these meetups and like cool, like ways of, making, speaking with people all around the world to have their perspective and stuff. So, watching documentaries, reading a lot, that was really, really a big part of my journey. And yeah, I honestly think like you individually are what inspire me to keep going. And that's really, yeah, that's what keeps me going. I think that's like the best way to say it, just because for so long, I feel like, I was even kind of made fun of at one point. I remember there was one Christmas, I wrapped everyone's Christmas gift in newspaper and like old magazines that I found. And like, I remember my family like giggling so hard, thinking like, that is so silly. Like, kind of like poking me a little bit about like not getting wrapping paper and stuff. And, I kind of brushed it off because I was like, you know what, I'm going to give them like 5 years. They're going to realize that this was the cool thing to do. And like, believe it or not, now my family is like so gung-ho on zero waste. And, they're always like, okay, what else are you doing? What else can we implement? We're always going back and forth on different things that people are trying within our family. And it's actually brought us closer together, which is really, really beautiful. So, I think if you're living with 12 people, and that's a little bit more challenging. That's like a Hada house situation. So I feel like, some of the things that would be fun to try, which is what we found was really effective with Hada house, is, we had, we kind of had a set of house rules. We made everything really easy to do. So like our waste management system was like properly labeled with all the different things that needed to go into that bin. It explained where all of, where the plastic waste or the paper waste or the food waste was going after the bin was full. Including everyone part of that conversation helps them realize, oh, like I get it now. Like if I just do this one simple thing, even though it might be inconvenient for my life, if I do this one simple thing, it can actually make a world of a difference if we multiply it by like 7.7 billion people, So yeah, I think just like your generation is what makes me feel awesome. So thank you for being such a leader, seriously.
It's all thanks to people like you who we get our inspiration from. And I got to know about zero waste and all about sustainability, the climate crisis, and everything on sort of social media, especially YouTube. I'm a big fan of just watching videos and learning new things. And I remember seeing this video with a lady with a jar in her hand, and it said that this is all the trash she produced in 3 years, all of that in that single jar. And I clicked on that video because obviously who wouldn't, thinking 3 years, like imagine the amount of waste you produce in 3 years, and someone could produce only that small jar of waste. So that is how I sort of started knowing about it. It was all through social media. I didn't read any books or any articles on it. It was just videos and posts. And that is how I got started. And that is how I think my generation picks up on these social issues, is through social media, because that's what they're constantly using. And it's great that social media is becoming more aware and speaking out on all of the issues. It's really great. And so I wanted to ask you, what is the most simplest thing that you found that could be changed, and so that you could lead a little less of a wasteful life? And what was the simplest thing that you didn't even realize that you should have been, opting for its alternative, sort of to nudge even people who is skeptical about this zero waste approach into, trying it out?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting question for me because I've moved around so much that I feel like I'm constantly having to kind of come up with new solutions to new challenges that I'm presented with. Because, well, I mean, I guess the last 2.5 years, I've been stationed in India, traveling a little bit. But living at Hada House. So like obviously having like a whole strategy put in place to implement zero waste practices made it a lot easier to kind of always be just improving and not necessarily just tackling new challenges. But I mean, if I had to think of, the simplest thing, honestly, again, mindset and the ability to just realize that, like, aiming for zero waste, don't even aim for zero waste. Just aim to do your best. Aim to do your best in every way possible. And I think the best way to start that is create a mindset that is based on, forgetting the fact that like things can be inconvenient, because it's true. Like we live in a world that is built on convenience, which is why it's so challenging for us to make these changes, because we have Zomato and Swiggy and everything can delivered to your doorstep. And now we're living in COVID times and everything's double packaged, and I have to like fight the sabzi wallas to like not give me a plastic bag, or I'm constantly telling like the guy beside me like, hey, like you have a reusable bag, why are you taking all these plastic bags from the sabzi wala? Just like things like this that just like kind of, they drive you crazy. But if you just kind of start approaching them with a positive mindset and this idea of just including people in the conversation, it makes a huge difference. And within your own household, I like to give everyone this challenge whenever I talk about going zero waste. I challenge everyone to, whether you live in an apartment, a house, a mansion, a farm, I want you to go into every space within your living space, whether it's your bedroom, your bathroom, your kitchen, outdoor space, etc., and take a look around. What are the different products that you're using, or what do you currently have access to that you could shift a little bit? Like, for the first time in my life, I have an RO water filter. And I've obviously never been a fan of RO water filters because it wastes so much water for every liter. I can't remember the amount of, I think it's like 4 liters of water for 1 liter is wasted. Something ridiculous like that. And, I just, something I was telling someone recently, I was like, yeah, just like stick the pipe in your washing machine and like use it for when you're like cleaning the floors and stuff. And they were like, oh, I never thought of collecting my wastewater. And it's like, yeah, like it's not even wastewater yet. It's actually gray water, because it's not drinkable. But it's, but it's still clean enough that you can use it for other purposes. And, just in telling a few people that, they were like, oh my goodness, like I never thought of that. And like, started implementing that practice into their lifestyle. And then, as soon as you realize like, hey, this is one thing I can do easily, what else can I do in my household? And then you start to get creative, and you start, making your own products, or, finding opportunities to turn things into other things. So that's kind of like, to kind of motivate everyone to kind of get into that mindset. Just that's actually the simplest way to get started. It's because as soon as you get into a habit of like, I can do this, I can make a change, you realize actually how easy and how exciting it is to be part of the community.
Yeah, even I like to think of the plastic bag as my first enemy, sort of. And that was the first thing I was so infuriated about, that why would we use a plastic bag when we have so many different alternatives? And I sort of found myself just carrying the items if there was no other alternative left. Instead of just using a plastic bag, I was like, there was, when I was younger, I remember if you were to go to a bookshop and buy a book, they would automatically just first instant put it in a plastic bag and hand it to you. Why? You don't even need a bag to carry just a book. So sort of realizing that a plastic water bottle too, a reusable water bottle is not that difficult to carry. If you're carrying so many things in your bag already, why not just slip in a water bottle too? And then you don't need to worry about finding water to buy also. And that it's filtered water from your home. And even about gray water, I really like that you mentioned that, because earlier in the year we had this sort of science competition thing where we had to think of ways to convert, to think of ways to come up with like converting gray water into drinking water. And there were other ways also, like moisture into water, but sort of the direction for my team was converting gray water to drinking water. So what we came up was a very simple uh, kind of a step base filter. So it was just like stairs, and each stair had a different kind of filter, and that would convert your gray water into drinking water. And
that's amazing. Oh my goodness.
really, really easy to implement even in rural areas. The step kind of model was because, it wouldn't require electricity then to pump up the water, pump down the water, anything like that. It was just use gravity, and you wouldn't need any electricity too. So that is really, really interesting, using waters from other sources and converting it into drinking water. If not drinking water, use it to water plants, or like washing your clothes, as you said, or cleaning around the house too. And so kind of my one of my last questions would be, what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone who's on the edge of trying zero waste, not really sure about just giving it a shot? So what is the advice you would give to that person who is still a little unsure? So
Yeah, I think ultimately, we both mentioned this, like it doesn't have to be you doing zero waste perfectly. Just start somewhere. And this conversation is actually, I'm really glad that we're talking about the different aspects of it, because going zero waste isn't just about what you're buying. It's also your entire lifestyle. I feel like I've talked about being resourceful so many times, but it is true. It's like, how can you make the most of what you have available to you? Because at the end of the day, going zero waste it shouldn't be this thing that is financially inaccessible. It shouldn't be something that's hard on your budget. It should actually be something that's saving you money on electricity, saving money on water resources, saving money on products because you're not consuming as much. Finding like, for example, for friends that are still doing a lot of like ordering in, takeout, etc. Like, get creative, put a couple hours aside, make it at home. Like, it's really about enjoying the experience. It's not just jumping in and being like, okay, I'm zero waste, like that's it. It's a journey. It's a journey, and it's a beautiful journey because it's also a learning experience. You're learning about all the different ways that you can help support people in the planet. And I wanted to mention something else. I can't remember now. But, and I think a great place to start is to identify what your values are. You know, if you wanted to leave a legacy, you know, we all have the power to leave a legacy on this world. You know, what do you want to be known for? It doesn't need to be, you don't need to be like the Beyonce of zero waste. It's just about, you know, how can you leave an impact on this earth so that you positively impact even just your family, you know, your kids, maybe your sister, your brother, your maybe your neighborhood, or maybe it is your greater community. So just think about, you know, what you want that to look like, and don't push yourself, because I have been pushing myself for so long, and you know, I'm very emotionally connected to the work I do as well. So sometimes, you know, for example, you know, I had a chocolate bar a couple days ago, and as soon as I ate that chocolate bar, I beat myself up about it. I was like, how dare I, you know, utilize this? Well, how dare I support this company? How dare I put trash into the system, you know? But it's also, your mental health is also so important in this time, especially during COVID, because we need every single one of us stepping up for living a more conscious lifestyle in this time, because we have the opportunity right now to shape the future. And that's why it's so important for youth to stand up and take action wherever they can, you know, starting the conversation, innovating on projects, finding ways to turn gray water into drinking water. Like, my goodness, like, this is such incredible action. And I don't think everyone realizes how powerful sometimes these small actions are, but they make such an impact on you individually in your journey, you know, your community, and what you could possibly do to help change our world. We are, you know, we're only on this world for so long, and we want to make sure that we are able to sustain it for future generations. So do what you can every single day. Try one little thing, you know, read, you know, take courses, join conversations. It's such a great opportunity to not just learn, but also to connect with other people and hear what people are up to, try new things, and feel good about what you're doing, because it is important and it's powerful. So, yeah.
Yeah, I loved everything that you said. And even I'm really on this kind of journey, not perfect, not even close to perfect right now. It's just the beginning. But I hope, you know, next year, if I leave for college, then I can sort of be, you know, come into my own and be a little ahead on this journey, and then come back and try and nudge my family a little more and into the zero waste life after I've already like experimented with it and tried it for like a year or so. And I think that's mainly all for my questions. And my last question I had decided was to ask you about the Hara world and how you sort of thought about it, how you were, how, you know, what was the thought? Like, how did you found this amazing, you know, project, and how other, like, how the youth can get involved, like my friends, my classmates, or, you know, anyone my age could get involved into that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hara World started because I was working in a small village called Gajner, which is just about 30 kilometers outside of Bikaner, Rajasthan, which is where Hara House is located. I was there in 2015 and 2016, working with a local NGO, developing a waste management project. So we were bringing together the community to understand, you know, the different challenges around sustainable development. And one of the topics that really stuck was, you know, challenging waste management, because it was evident that the community was aware, like, hey, there's trash everywhere. We're just throwing it, you know, people, as soon as you start kind of bringing up the conversation, everyone starts to get a little bit more aware, and they're like, oh yeah, like maybe this is an issue. And it was this really cool conversation that brought the community together. And through that, we developed a waste management system where we were working with one of the vulnerable communities, a migrant community, actually just outside the village. One of the local families, they were collecting trash and selling it back to manufacturers. And we're like, well, why don't we kind of implement this system throughout in the village? And, you know, we can provide a small stipend to this man to collect it all, and we can bring it to the manufacturing facility with him. So we set up at like all the chai stands and all the snack shops and all the, you know, the dabas and everything to have, you know, a simple waste management system. It was basically like plastic, paper, and like everything else, because it was really challenging to kind of, we didn't want to give them 6 bins. They were going to be like, whoa. So then what we would do is every week we would collect it. We would bring it to the recycling unit in Bikaner, and all of it would be separated. And the man that was collecting the waste with us, he would be given, so many rupees per kg of waste that he was giving. And after a few months, it was going so well that he actually like invested in a motorcycle so he could drive all the waste to there instead of taking the local bus. So, this was such a cool concept for not only bringing awareness to waste management, helping the community actually, implement a solution that was community-based. So it wasn't me as a foreigner coming in and being like, hey, you should do this. It was very much the community coming together, realizing there was an issue and wanting to solve it together, and then providing economic opportunity to this man. And after doing that for 2 years, myself and my colleague Manoj were like, what if we, created kind of like a social enterprise model that can continue to support these types of projects where we have more community development coming through and more young people having access to resources and even funding so they can start their own projects. So we developed Hada House. So Hada House's model is a zero waste guest house with 20% of profits going into community development projects. Unfortunately, the house is closed due to obviously, we were dealing with some like financial issues in terms of like not enough tourism coming into Bikaner, and then COVID hit, which was such a nightmare and so sad, because just before COVID, we actually launched our first community hub as well in Bikaner, and we had a bunch of young people come in and they decorated the entire community space with environmental justice themed art, and it was amazing. But of course, like we're not going anywhere. And that's why I'm so grateful that we actually ended up building Hada World, earlier last year. So Hada World is, looks at, it's for youth, for experiential education as well as impact travel. So we run different programs, at the actual Hada House location across India, that focus on various environmental justice themes. So providing young people ages, anything from like 8 to 25, 30 sometimes, access to the education they need, resources, tools, and opportunities to implement activities that actually address environmental challenges. We also run a series of day tours that employ young students, entrepreneurs in Bikaner, Delhi, and Mumbai, which we actually partnered with Tribes for Good on. It's been so beautiful to watch kind of all these programs flourish. So, as we're going through COVID, we also have an online program that youth are welcome to join called Hada Ambassadors. You can check it out at hadaworld.com/Hada Ambassador. It's basically an online platform for youth ages 12 to 25 to access mentorship. We have different innovation challenges where you can get funding for your project to actually launch it in your community. We provide mentorship. And then also it's this great platform for our ambassadors. We have ambassadors all across India, Australia, Europe, Canada, United States. And it's so amazing to watch so many diverse young people come together and just kill it. Like they're just always in the conversation, talking about awesome stuff, seeing, what everyone else is up to, different solutions, and of course, participating in our really fun challenges. Our last challenge we did was getting our youth to innovate on different textiles that they had at home, so an upcycling challenge. We also ran an upcycled fashion challenge at Hada House in January and February, which was our last program before the house closed. But moving forward into the future, we're going to be using the Hada Ambassador program to launch a fellowship program, which is going to lead into an impact camp program. So currently we're talking with a bunch of awesome stakeholders across Punjab, where I'm currently located. I'm currently in Chandigarh with my husband. And we're looking to see how we can create more of an agricultural side of Hada World, so we can connect more youth to, sustainable food systems, the challenges of the agricultural sector in India, and, start some fun farm to table projects. So there's lots of awesome programming still happening. Just of course, with COVID happening, it's just a little bit of a roller coaster ride, which I'm sure most people are experiencing. But to check out more about what we're up to, you can definitely visit hadaworld.com, and on Instagram and Facebook, we are the Hada Revolution. So yeah, feel free to reach out, ask questions, and join our ambassador program, of course.
That's amazing. And it's just really great hearing all of that. And I really love the fact that you empower the people. And, sometimes you see some of those humanitarian trips where where a group of people, they'll go and they'll decide what the locals need instead of asking them, and they'll just sort of just do everything for them and just go away. But addressing the needs of the people and actually empowering them to learn how to take care of themselves and be financially stable and support themselves on their own and be independent really is very, very important. And I love how you do that and take like that into everything that you do and keep that in mind. And so that's like all of my questions are over. And I just want to ask anyone who's attending, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can ask them here right now. And yeah, if there are any questions, we could just address them right now as well. So we have a question in the chat. I'll just read it out. So I wanted to ask what you think of the Mason jar subculture of zero waste, because practically everyone has things that they don't consider as trash. So at a certain point, you could just start to justify not putting your trash in the jar.
That's a very good. And I'm actually so glad that was brought up, because that's going to also look different depending on where you are located in the world. Like if you're in more of like a rural community and don't have access to the proper systems for waste management, that jar is going to be very, very full, right? If you're living in a city like New York, or a really developed city that has proper infrastructure to recycle, upcycle, all of this stuff, it's going to be, your jar is going to look a little bit more empty. That being said, this is, I feel like we have to look at it for what it is as well, that it is a way to motivate this culture of people thinking like, can I do that? Is it possible for me? So, obviously it's going to take a long time to get all your trash in one jar, especially, during a time like COVID. Like I honestly, I've never struggled so much with going zero waste than I have in this time. It is baffling. Like I probably produced more waste in the last 3 months than I have in the last 3 years. And that being said, again, I mean, I could probably fill a jar. I could probably do that challenge too, maybe. I just don't feel like it's definitely the best way to approach it, but it definitely is still a way to motivate people to think like, is it possible? Because it is possible. So of course people are gonna knock it. There's gonna be lots of conversation about it, but try it. You never know. Like me and my husband, and I have a dog, we fill about one biodegradable bag of like waste every like 2 weeks. But that's not considering the recyclable items that we're finding other uses for in our compost. We have a whole composting system. So that would be things that come into our house that we haven't been able to source in glass, or that we haven't been able to buy in bulk. I'll actually be honest, I currently live in Mohali, which is even more challenging to access what we need zero waste. So that's definitely been a challenge. But if you start to consider, if you start actually, creating a system in your house where you can, start to categorize where all the different products are going to go, that's going to help you realize, what is waste and what's not. And then you can kind of decide for yourself where you're at. So don't compare yourself so much to everybody online, because I feel like especially because conscious consumerism and going zero waste has become so trendy. I feel like and because Instagram is such a perpetuator of comparison and stereotypes, it's very, very hard to, see those things sometimes and feel demotivated, because you're like, oh my gosh, everyone's doing it so well. Why am I not? We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. We are all coming from very different cultural settings. We're all living in different places across the world with completely different infrastructures, different access to products. I saw someone on Instagram recently, an influencer, who displayed all of the trash that she had accumulated over COVID. And it was fascinating because she literally put up everything, and it was, I was excited to see that she was open to showing off what she had produced. But at the same time, her entire image was filled with Lay's chip bags and, chocolate bar wrappers and Maggi noodle wrappers and stuff like that. And, it made me realize, if we just stop consuming those products, we can make a huge difference. You know, like it's also, I know that, you know, chips and chocolate and Maggie is yummy, of course, but, you know, I can't remember the last time I had Maggie. You know, you don't need those products. And also, they're horrible for you, let's be honest. There's absolutely no nutrients in any of those foods. But, you know, just eliminating those things, you're going to see how quickly you might actually be able to just fill a jar in like a month or two. Because as soon as you start being more conscious about what you're buying and the packaging that it comes in, you immediately start to reduce your waste without even like realizing it. Just by making a choice to not buy things in you know, Tetra Pak packaging. So that would be anything that has like, you know, or like a mixed trash product. So that would be like a mix of plastic, paper, sometimes aluminum. So like juice containers, chip packages, that kind of stuff. That stuff is actually like not recyclable. You have to strip every part of it manually in order to recycle it sustainably. And no manufacturer facility wants to do that. I'll be completely honest. That's not happening. Yeah, I would suggest, like, if you know, if you're interested in pursuing this, I like that you called it a subculture or subcategory, you know, interested in pursuing that, just start to think about, you know, those products that you might be consuming that, you know, they're obviously going to look bad in that jar if you put it up on social media. So what would you want your community to see? How can you be more authentic with your experience? I think that's where you want to start with. You know, where are you being challenged right now? Share that with your community, because that's also authentic and realistic for a lot of the people who are trying to go zero waste, because we're all facing the same challenges, honestly. It's just, if we open the conversation, be authentic about the challenges, the mistakes we're making, even if they're not intentional, you know, and asking our community for advice. And if these people that are doing, you know, if they're able to do waste in a jar for a month, ask them, how did you do it? You know, what are some tips? Get them to open up that conversation with you, because, you know, you'll get 1,000 likes for showing a jar, but if you want to talk about your process, that's where the real connection and the real impact is going to happen. So that was a very long segue. I apologize.
Yeah. And I just want to add that, you know, I'm a big potato chip fan. So instead of buying Lay's, you can make them at home. We make them at home here. And, you know, I like them. The homemade ones are just as fine as the Lay's ones. And you can add your own seasoning. You can get creative with it and make your own chips at home. There are a lot of YouTube tutorials as well. So you can just go online and search up how to make potato chips, and it doesn't require anything at all. So that's also
yeah. And just a side note about that also is, you know, when I see it, also think about when you do purchase, where is that money going? I know this isn't as much aligned with zero waste, but it is about conscious living. If you're investing in companies like Lay's chips and stuff, you're actually sending the money out of the country. How can you invest in locally made products and food and beverage and et cetera? Like, you know, what's a local brand? Like, instead of going with Lay's, go with like Tornadoes or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's even some simple shifts that you can make right away. If you're not ready to just dive in, you're not ready to give up those chips, but I know you can do it. You know, start thinking about how you can invest more locally, instead of thinking about all that money that you're investing here in your own country and getting shipped out to the West. So just start thinking about that as well.
Yeah, I think that's all. We don't have any other questions coming in, I think. So yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your time and having this conversation with us. I really learned a lot, and I'm sure that everyone who attended really learned a lot as well. And it was a very meaningful conversation and a very productive one as well. So thank you. And
thank you. Like, you are so wonderful, and I want to hear. I want to talk to you about more about your wastewater project that you did. That sounds so cool, because I feel like that's probably one of 100 things that you're working on. You're so inspiring. Thank you for hosting this talk.
I just think that a lot you find inspiration in your own peers now. In the age we are, you can find inspiration anywhere. I find my friends, my peers so inspiring with the things that they're doing, that sometimes even I think to myself, how are they the same age as me and accomplishing so much that I could never imagine myself doing. But it's just the small effort that you make and the small steps that really add up.
Absolutely. And please don't compare yourself. This is your individual journey, and do it at the pace that you need to, because again, I like to connect all these topics back to mental health. Your mental health and nurturing your mental health in this process is very, very crucial. So one step at a time, one conversation at a time, every day, you just learn to make better choices and do better. Yes, Bianca's going to make potato chips.
So again, I'd like to thank you, Nandini. Thanks a lot for conducting this session, and thank you so much, Jasmine, for actually, giving insights into how zero waste looks like and how we can look into conscious living. And that, to be honest, has somewhere inspired me. So I think the whole takeaway was that we can get into a conversation where we can understand how we, at a personal level, can definitely start looking into conscious lifestyles and take a step towards zero waste, if not do it right away. So I think that was a really good thing that we did, and we are definitely looking forward to more such sessions in the future. And thanks to everyone who actually attended this session and patiently understood what we are trying to get across and what is the things that could actually make a difference. Because given the situation currently, consumerism or consumption is something that we all look at, but not at how responsible we are for consuming products and how we should consume them responsibly as well. And once again, most of you might have come from our Instagram handle or other social media. Those who do not know about us, we are Tribes for Good. We are again a social impact organization which focuses on youth-led projects, and you can follow us on Instagram at the rate Tribes for Good. That's TRIBES for FOR Good. And you can also visit our website tribesforgood.com/young-changemakers. Our applications are open for our Young Changemakers program. So if you're wanting to do something of your own but aren't sure how, like Nandini, you can definitely check out our program. Or if you want to become a social entrepreneur just like Jasmine, the program might also help you actually achieve that in the future. So yeah, guys, visit our website or just reach us out on Instagram or whichever medium you feel comfortable. And thanks a lot again, everyone, for joining. I'll see you guys next time. Perfect. Bye.
Thank you again. Bye,
Thanks a
guys.
lot. Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank
Thanks a
you
lot,
to everyone
Nandini.
who attended as well. And I know we're actually a lot more busier sitting at home than we would be normally. So thank you for taking out the time and attending this webinar. So thank you.
Definitely. Bye,
Thanks,
guys. Bye, everyone.
everyone.
All right. Great, Nandini. I think thanks a lot. Let me just